Hello and welcome back to just another football podcast. Back again. I'm back again after a little break. And I'm joined tonight by the two Chelsea lads, George and Fergal. I think it's been a while since I recorded with you both. So how are you both doing?
I'm very well. Been enjoying myself, I have to say. Good weekend.
Good. Glad to hear. George?
Yeah, good. Yeah, good weekend of football. Pretty happy. Getting ready to go again on the podcast. Bit of out of practice. Done one in like 2 months.
Yeah, don't worry, mate. We've all been there.
Your podcast appearance rate is a bit like Lukaku's goal
Oh.
scoring form, isn't it?
I'm constantly injured. That's.
I mean, he does he used to idolise the guy. He's taking inspiration from him. He's a bit hit and miss. We've got plenty of good stuff coming today on the podcast. Obviously, the Manchester derby this weekend, which will be the first thing we talk about. Got some of the other action from the weekend, and some of the fallout from the Abramovic news, which obviously has happened since we last recorded. Got the two Chelsea boys here to talk about that today. So we'll have plenty of stuff coming your way. We'll start off with the big game of the weekend, which was the Manchester derby. And I think that, the stakes were high for kind of both teams going into this game for different reasons. Obviously, you got Man City getting pushed all the way by Liverpool, who are the form side in the league at the moment. They're winning a lot and playing very well. And we'll get to them in a bit. But they got the result. Man City knew that going into this game. And there wasn't much room for error. And Man United, obviously, had just been pushed down into fifth. Arsenal won earlier in the day. And they've played 3 extra games now. So it's a big game for both teams going into it. And it was competitive for a half, lads. That's probably the best I could say for Man United, kind of on that account.
Yeah, I thought Man United set up really well in the first half, to be honest. And if they carried on in that form, it certainly looked like it could have been a draw, or even nicked 3 points. They wouldn't have deserved it necessarily. I think they were the slightly worse side in the first half, but still, put up a fight, were competitive. Looked like a Manchester derby. It wasn't sort of miles apart, and then obviously the second half is a completely different story. I'm sure we'll speak about.
I think the thing is that it is funny because everyone talks about how much worse they are than Man City, how there's light years between the two teams, and there absolutely is in terms of consistency across 38 games. But they have had a funny record against them in recent years, particularly under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I think they'd won the last 3 games at the Etihad in all competitions. I think they beat them in the Carabao Cup game, and they'd won the last 2 league games, and so they had history, but. And as you said, for a bit of the game, probably, the first half, certainly, it kind of looked like the template was similar, sitting in, pressing where they could, but then looking to really hit them on the break, like Spurs did a couple of weeks ago. And they had a bit of success doing that. But I think the second half, particularly when it went to 3-1, I think there were 2 points in the second half for me where the game changed. One was where it went to 3-1, and then the other was the substitutes he made, which I think were just before the third goal was scored, where he brought Rashford and Lingard on. And I don't want to go in on individuals, but those two coming on, the overall team performance after that, the team balance and the way it kind of worked, I mean, they really didn't get a look in. I thought Rashford in particular, I thought the way he equipped himself, and it's quite relevant because the articles this morning and sort of some of the leaks coming out saying he might be looking to leave the club at the end of the season because of lack of game time. And they showed a few clips of him tonight on Monday Night Football, and he was walking. And I think when you're playing a team like Man City that pass the ball around and work you to death, and you really have to work hard just to get the ball back, and you've got guys that have played 60, 70 minutes of that, and you've just come on and you're unhappy with how much you're playing. I don't want to make this about Marcus Rashford, but it was kind of a flashpoint in the game where his performance was appalling, and it really is stark kind of where he's gotten to with his performance. And I think he's a relevant one because he's kind of maybe symbolic of Man United this season. They've just totally lost their way. I don't know where they are, and it kind of looks like, I think at the start of the season, I didn't think they could win the league, but I think the expectation was they will go that next step and at least compete for it. Get into the 80s in terms of points, and at least make a fist of it.
4.
I think top 4 was minimum, but it wasn't just top 4. It was they'll be top 4, and they will. I thought it was
top 4, and there'll be a clear gap between 4th and 5th.
That's
Yeah.
what I said 80
Yeah.
points, because 80 points, I think 80 points plus is you're winning. It's more than 2 points per game on average. It's like across the season, you're winning a lot of games, probably quite convincingly. And you've kind of, I think last season they had 74 points. So you can see that if you're getting 80 points and kind of knocking on the door, you've gone to that sort of next step. And they just haven't at all. And as you said, they've regressed. And they're now in a position where top four is going to be a struggle for them, because if you look at it, they've played 28 games now. So they've got 10 games left. 4 of those 10 games that are left against Spurs, Liverpool, Chelsea, and Arsenal. So that's nearly half the games are against their other top 6 rivals. They've got, I think they got Palace away and Brighton away, a couple of other sort of like tricky games mixed in there. So there's not a lot of easy games for them. And that was the thing. You sort of looked at their fixtures when Ralph came in and you thought they're going to have to get points on the board, because when you get to March and you sort of add the Champions League into the mix, they've got a lot of hard games to be dealing with. And I mean, they're now in a position as, you know, I think they're third horse now for the top 4. I think Spurs winning tonight, and Spurs have games in hand, and that game next weekend is looking it's a big game. I think whoever loses it is in huge trouble. If it's Man United, I think they're pretty much out of it. But I don't know where you guys kind of stand on them. Who's to blame for kind of what's going on at the moment? Because while it's not Rangnick's fault necessarily, I mean, it isn't his fault. He didn't sign any of these players. He's come in halfway through the season. I wouldn't say he's making a great fist of it. I know they've got better. People will say they've got better, and I understand the sentiment behind that. But they've played some really poor teams along the way, and the results haven't been great. Like, they've been drawing to Burnley and Southampton, and they lost. They went out the FA Cup to Middlesbrough. It's just not, the performances haven't been consistent across the time that he's been there.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think Rangnick is having some real problems with dressing room characters as well, which Ollie didn't have. But I think the problem is anyone who did come in needed to destroy this dressing room. Like, there was no way someone who would come in could do the same thing that Ollie did and try and manage big egos with just praise and no accountability. So no matter what manager came in, I think this dressing room split would have been inevitable between those who are going to try and move the club forward and those who are looking for excuses for themselves, for individuals. And it could have been anyone. You know, I don't think you're permanently in a position of only looking out for yourself and not playing for the team. But I think it's become quite stark, you know, in terms of certain players within the media that's come out that just don't particularly care, or at least are trying to save face. It was an embarrassing display. The second half, it was genuinely
the
shocking.
last half an hour, I think, in particular,
it was really embarrassing. And they can only have 3 excuses, and none of them look good. One, they're miles off City quality wise, which isn't good looking at the spending of Man United. 2, they're not as fit as City, which is disgraceful if that's the case. If they can't last 90 minutes, then what kind of professional footballers are they? Or 3, they don't care. They don't have the character. None of those excuses.
But I think it's a combination of all the things you mentioned.
Yeah, no,
they are worse than City, no doubt. They aren't as fit as City. And some players in that dressing room, undoubtedly, even if it's not a deliberate thing where I don't think any footballer goes out on the pitch and thinks, I'm not going to try today.
Yeah.
But I just think if you're mentally not in the right headspace for it, you know, the 2 guys they bring on, Rashford and
belief. It's
like,
if you
that was one of the things.
You're coming up against this team that you're not going to get a kick of the ball from, and you know that you're not playing well, and then you go, and then after the second goal, and the way it happens, it's a bit of a disaster, a bit of a mix-up, and all the rest of it. And see why you're just like, oh, Jesus Christ, what is this like? It'd be so demotivating being in that scenario.
Yeah, it's just players making mistakes. You know, the defending for and it's embarrassing that back line, that back 4, cost a combined 175 million. I think it was.
It's insane.
So it's not like they're playing with like academy players back there, like young kids or people they spent little amounts of money on, like a shoestring budget. These are guys that they spent big money on, and I don't think any of them are good enough at the back four.
Mhm.
And
No.
it's a pretty damning indictment when you look at the money that's been spent. So one of the
Yeah.
comparisons they did yesterday was Man City and Man United over the last 8 years or 9 years since Ferguson left. And one of the means for comparison was net like spend. And Man United spent 1.2 billion, and Man City spent 1.25. And I, as an Arsenal fan, will bang on the drum and say Man City are guaranteed success. But then Man United are kind of maybe a contradiction of that. That you can spend all the money you want, but you have to have the right people running
Well,
the club.
Well, famously, one of like the stats of a Premier League era is that there's no direct correlation between spend and points on the board. There is correlation between a wage, however, and points on the board. But there's no statistical proof that you spend more
But
money, you're going to get a better player or a better team.
it doesn't guarantee anything. I think what I would say, and I'll come back to this later on, I think when we talk about Abramovic a bit, I think if you have access to great amounts of money and you can spend big in pretty much every transfer market, it allows you to make mistakes. Like Man
Yeah,
United
yeah,
will spend big next transfer window and the one after that and the one after that
I mean,
because they can.
City took a while to get their centre backs right,
There you
like
go.
Gala and
Mhm.
there's a couple
Well,
more ones.
and all the
And
fullbacks
their
that Pep signed.
fullbacks they just kept could not get the right ones for a long time. Arsenal done well out of that. There's,
Yeah, they took a few of ours.
but
Yeah.
yeah, it's you're asking who's to blame for it all, and it's calamitous
Everyone.
decision after calamitous
Who's not to
decision.
blame would
Yeah.
probably be like a shorter answer, a short response.
But it's just like what one poor decision, and then that affects the next decision because then they feel like something drastic needs to change. Like it was constant flip flop between tactical style. They just need to stay. Like Ragnick might not be the best manager, but you need to stick with the philosophy. Look at Leeds, and that's a terrible example at the moment. But Leeds have gone. It's not going well, but we're not. Yeah, and it's almost a disaster. But we're gonna go and get a similar type of manager.
Yeah, I'm not going to go Sam Allardyce.
Not gonna go Sam Allardyce.
Yeah.
Type of manager. And
There's no. I agree, and for me, there's no consistency, not just with managers, but with recruitment as well. If you go through all the players they signed over the
that's
last
what I mean,
3-4
though. But
years,
it's the managers that cause that.
of course,
And then Ollie, to his credit, when he came in, he tried to be like, well, at least we'll sign young players that have a sell-on value.
Yeah.
But they,
but
and I think they've
stylistically,
done a whole big, clear out of the recruitment team and brought in new people and stuff. But maybe they need to do that again if they're gonna do anything. But anything drastic. But it's culminated in just a mixed match of individuals, really.
yeah, I think they've got 3 or 4 different players that will be better, ideal in sort of different systems. Like you look at the likes of Wan-Bissaka and Maguire, for example, they're going to be better in teams that defend deeper and maybe hit teams on the break.
They'll be perfect for Burnley.
I didn't want to say it, but yeah, sure. Before we finish, just a word on Man City. I mean, I've been there. I think the reason I'm not so critical of Man United is because I've been there as an Arsenal fan, where you're getting beaten heavily.
I was interested which way you'd been.
I've been to Man City. No, I haven't
I've
actually.
been top of the table. And
No, God, no. But I've been there as a fan where you're playing them and they're 3-0 up or 4-1 up or 3-1, whatever it is, and they're just knocking it around the back and you can't get the ball off them, and you kind of you in your mind, I think, as a fan and maybe as a player, and this isn't acceptable, but you've kind of just accepted, look, the game's gone. Like, do you really want to expend a load of energy just chasing them around?
It is acceptable now against Man City in particular. I think that they haven't dropped any points this season from a winning position.
Yeah. It's It's
I mean, they are, yeah.
They're the machine. They're a machine.
It's ridiculous. I mean, when you watch them like play with a 1-0, and you've seen it a few times. I think there was a game. I think it was Brentford. Maybe they won 1-0. And in my mind, like I've seen Arsenal win a lot of games this season by 1 goal, and I'm kind of like living every moment of it till the final whistle. But then when I watch Man City, and I think, like, as a Man City fan, are you ever anxious watching them defend a 1 goal lead? It's like, well, they have 80% of the ball. The team that they're playing against pretty much don't get it into their box. They don't. They do the basics so well. They don't give away any stupid free kicks and stupid corners and throw-ins and territory, like whatever it is. I've never seen a team defend a lead as well as they do, and it's not that it's not this kind of. It used to be Jose Mourinho, Catenaccio, whatever it's called, where you sit deep and hit teams on the break and just you block spaces. They just don't let you have the ball. It's like demoralising, as I said, like as sort of as an opposition. I'm torn actually, lads. I don't know where the title race is going. I mean, we'll talk about Liverpool in a second, but.
I've still. You've got to back Man City. I think
They're
Pep
still the
Guardiola
heavy favourites.
Pep
They've got
Guardiola.
it's at home as well. I mean,
he's just incredible. I think genuinely he is. If he had been in the Premier League his whole career, I reckon he would be ahead of Fergie right now in terms of who is the best Premier League manager ever to be in the Premier League. He's just incredible.
It's hard to compare, I suppose, because the infrastructure's there at Man City, and I don't just mean the money.
If he'd started at Man City at the start of his manager, he
would have been sacked.
Mancini would have been got in.
He would have been. He would have been losing 6-0 to Middlesbrough, wouldn't he?
And I bet Mancini wishes he was the manager there now, because I actually think that since Pep's come in, it's coincided with, I think, Man City as a club have run probably a lot better than they were when he was there or when Pellegrini was there.
It's amazing that they have that much money, and yet they have been quite shrewd and seem to always. You always look at Man City's top signs, and all the time you go, that's value for money. That's quite a bang on the sort of price point. Maybe not Jack Grealish so much. That's the one that they've really pushed out. But they had so many like 50, 60 million signs that were like just seemed like spot on. Like you're not getting done, and all of them always work out. The other thing about Jack Grealish, just like popped into my head when like hearing the talk about Grealish and slagging him off in particular was just remember what Bernardo Silva was like whenever he came in. He was like, it took him a while to get used to it all.
Yeah, and that is the thing at Man City. I think what you see is because there's so many good players that it kind of there's not that with Grealish there has been to an extent because he's English and because he was 100 million. There was kind of that spotlight on him for his performances up to date. But generally, like Bernardo Silva's a great example. In his first season, he took a bit of time to hit the ground running, but no one mentioned it because everyone else was so good.
He was as good as Grealish, I think. For Monaco, like he was ridiculous.
And then it took a bit of time, but like no one cared because they were Centurions. Like they got 100 points that season, and like no one notices it. Like it's a great place to go in and learn your trade, kind of under the radar, and develop as a player. Just a winning machine, and I think they're going to be very difficult to stop. As good as Liverpool are, and we'll talk about that among other things after this. Welcome back. We'll get into some of the other weekend's action now, and as we've already mentioned them, we'll talk a bit about Liverpool. Just sort of briefly go over some of these games. Liverpool had a squeaky little 1-0 win against West Ham. Although, and you guys have probably seen this with Chelsea in your time, it was a sort of win that you see from champions sometimes where you're not at your best, but you just get the result and move on, and you can just shelve it after that. Like, it does happen. You're not going to... As good as Liverpool and Man City have been the last few years, you can't be at 100% every game. And I think it was one of those where you're playing a tough opposition. You've played, I think they played 3 times or twice since West Ham had last played, given the Carabao Cup and then the FA Cup in the week. So I think it was one just about getting the result. Where does it leave the title race for you guys in terms of Liverpool? Have they got any chance of chasing them down? Kind of from their perspective, do you see any chinks in their armoury? Because obviously you played them last weekend. Was there anything you noticed?
In terms of the title race, I think it's like, well, the same as it was because nothing's changed. Other than perhaps City beating someone that could have taken points off them. But like, I wouldn't I never write Liverpool off. This Liverpool team is special. So like, but it's heavily in Man City's favor. But I feel like, well, we've drawn with Liverpool 3 times now. And in both the Man City games, I didn't feel like we were anywhere close to them, really. So that's where I see the.
It's a good point, actually. Watching those games this season, if I was a Chelsea fan, you played Liverpool 3 times. I actually think in at least 2 of the games were probably the better team, and you actually got nothing. Well, you got a couple of draws and then lost them penalties. The Man City games, you were pretty comprehensively outplayed in both of them. Like particularly that home game, I thought. But that's not how you evaluate it. But kind of from what you guys have seen, Man City at that level, when they play like that against anyone, it's hard to get near them. Whereas I look at Liverpool, and that West Ham game is a good example of it. They do give you chances. Like even in the Carabao Cup final, Chelsea had chances with that high line. Mount missed a couple, and there was some close offsides.
Lanzini missed
give you chances.
Chance,
Lanzini missed this, and I think it was Lanzini or Fornals. It hit one way over the bar from about 3 yards out. It's just an absolute sitter. But there was there was 3 or 4 of those where one ball over the top. Van Dijk and Konate were very casual on the day.
Yeah, I think if you sorry to cut you off.
That's right.
I think if you had to predict it, Man City's like squad are just more complete. They're just more complete. Liverpool still rely realistically on a couple of individuals to pull them through games.
But they have added firepower. That is what I would say. Like I look at it now. Before it was just Mane and Salah. Now it's Mane, Salah, Jota, Diaz, Firmino.
But their midfield is still
But the midfield facilitates.
Well. Not necessarily goals from Elliot, but like I just think
a bit of craft.
Hanging on about that right hand side.
It's difficult to compare, George. I think because the midfield is there to facilitate, the fullbacks and the forwards. Yeah. Whereas Man City, it's different, isn't it? They play with technicians. I know Cancelo bombs on a bit, but it's kind of they're different systems they create from kind of different areas. As good as they both are, they're not doing the same things. But at the moment, like barring that ridiculous result against Spurs with Man City, they have been very consistent. I don't see many chinks in the armoury. Not as many as I do with Liverpool, who are a very good team. And we'll run them close. Like, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if there aren't many. I mean, you'd expect them both to slip up at some point, other than that game against each other. But you just don't know. I mean, you look at that run to the line they both had in 2018-19, where they both just won every game to the end of the season from like March onwards. So there's 2 very good teams going at it, and it's kind of depressing that we're not at that level, and you're kind of in that sort of zone in between. But moving on, I want to talk about a bit of Wenger ball at Vicarage Road this weekend. I was there, taking it all in the away end, and I've used the term there, so I'll explain it. It was probably the closest thing I've seen to Wenger ball since the man himself retired at both ends, to be honest with you, because it was pretty chaotic at the back. But we scored some lovely goals going forwards and ultimately got the result.
I don't know if you'll see a better 3 goals all season in one game.
Yeah,
I mean, the goal they scored as well. The first
the overhead kick one was brilliant. And the good thing for Arsenal is it looks like that they're repeatable moves. I mean, they literally repeat.
It looks coached, doesn't it? Like, it's patterns of play. It's not. I mean, Saka does well on his goal, winning it back and playing a 1-2. But like the other goals, and you look at it, it's patterns of play, particularly with Saka and Odegaard, sort of on that right half space, playing the 1-2s and cutting it back. You can see that, and that's been happening more in recent weeks. That's something that's getting coached. And for me, I've not seen that for years, really. It's all been kind of individuals and moments, and not many of them in truth. So I was pleased from that aspect. I actually thought Watford played quite well. I was quite relieved to get a result because it wasn't like we turned up and they were poor and just gave it to us. They did equip themselves quite well. They did offer something.
I thought the last goal was poor, but
it was terrible. But I was annoyed with that as well because I watched it back. Xhaka, I mean, what he does there is just unbelievable. For an experienced player, there's like 4 minutes or whatever there was left, plus injury time. We were coasting. I mean, we messed about so much after making it 3-1. We were like, and the reason I said Wenger ball as well, we were trying to walk the ball in after it went to 3-1.
Yeah.
There was a moment where like Lacazette and Ødegaard couldn't decide who was going to score the goal, and were like trying to pass it to each other from about 6 yards out.
The good thing is, though, at least Jack has used up one of his mistakes.
Yeah, that is true. If you're going to make a mistake, do it then. I mean, I have to say I was cursing him in the away end, though, because it was like, I think it was the 87th minute, and then there was 5 minutes of added time, and you just, this should be 4 or 5-1, and we should be like on our way home.
I thought Ben White was poor for that goal.
He was. He got scared. Yeah,
he just came in flying.
I have to say, like all round, I thought all 4 defenders and the goalkeeper were pretty poor on the day, and it's fine because we won the game and scored 3 goals. When you score 3 goals, you can afford it. And I have to say, like, if you offer me a bit of chaos, but we score 3, the opposition score 2, or last season when it was basically either we win 1-0 or the opposition win 1-0, and a lot of those games kind of before Christmas, it was, we'll have 1 chance, they'll have 1 chance. And I couldn't stand watching it. I'd much rather have a bit of chaos. At least it's fun to watch. Now, had we drawn 3-3, I don't know if I'd be sat here saying the same thing, but like, I think I can take a step back from it and go, do you know what? It was a fun game to watch. We scored 3 goals. I can't complain that much. And actually, like, on paper, it's probably one of our easiest games left this season, but they don't always turn out that way. Like, Watford are fighting for their lives down there. They've got some good players. Hodgson, if not anything else, he's an experienced manager. He knows the league. Going to make it difficult where he can. I didn't think they were very good at the back, but they equipped themselves quite well.
Yeah, and I thought Arsenal's press looked a lot more uniform.
It's been better. It's been a lot better.
So much better. And I know it takes a while to actually instill that. So I think Arteta's finally getting his Pep side in, and what he learned under Pep into this Arsenal team, looking a lot more cohesive. Maybe losing Aubameyang helps with that in terms of press, and also I think link-up play as well. I don't see Aubameyang doing the passes.
He can't do what Lacazette does.
Lacazette was doing.
Exactly. And Lacazette's not, he's not amazing, but he's got 7 assists in the last 9 games. Aubameyang and the 2
look brilliant. As long as he doesn't shoot,
the 2 assists he gets,
touches are fantastic. Like and Ødegaard, it was 2 of the goals he just done 1-touch passes. And like that.
I don't know if he meant that little flick. I mean, if he did, it's unbelievable.
He did.
I don't know. I've watched it a couple of times. It's sort of like, I can't. But if he didn't, he reacts to it very quickly and he's off, and then he gets it back and he scored. Like, he's been great. I think that's you mentioned Aubameyang going out of the team, and that is one of them. If you trace it back to sort of the start of December, the other one is Ødegaard's come into the team, and he's just been fantastic. I mean, the last 3 months, he's just like every game's been 8 out of 10 performances from him, just running everything.
Yeah.
And he's been really good, and him and Saka are just great together.
I find it hard to believe Arsenal won't win or won't get Champions League. At
the moment,
I think, but obviously,
do you know what it is?
They're real heavy favourites for it.
We are now. Well. I look at it. I have to say, I think with Man United, as I said, because they've only got 10 games left, and 4 of them I think are very hard. I think we're fine. Tottenham, I'm a little bit worried about because they won tonight. We've still got to go there and play them, and it is 6 points if we win against Leicester next weekend. But if we don't, it's only 3. I'm still a bit worried about Spurs, not necessarily because of what I'm seeing from them, but just because it's Spurs, and it would really pain me if we bottled it to them. So I can't quite write them off. But we're favourites now. I suppose the only thing is, if you look at our squad, a couple of injuries, a couple of players lose form, it can change so quickly. But I think at the moment, it's interesting because we've not played quite a few times recently, because obviously you guys were at the Club World Cup and then Liverpool were in the Carabao Cup final. So we've had a couple of weekends off, and on those weekends off, our rivals have been slipping up. So there's kind of been this, no one wants top 4. No, we do. We've won our last 4 games. Yeah. I think the only time we've lost in the last 10 is Man City, and that was in the 94th minute. We've been consistent, but I think because we've not been playing, it's kind of like we've gone under the radar a bit. I think what's going to change now is, as you've said, we are favourites. And I think, bar Gary Neville on Sky Sports last night saying we're not favourites, most people will look at it and think they've got 3 games in hand. He still thinks United are going to do it.
Really?
Yeah, but then
didn't
again,
hear
this is coming from the same guy who said he didn't understand our strategy in the summer. So I don't know how much you can you really believe of what he says. But we're in a good position, and as I said, it's kind of I think the only reasons for concern at the moment are things that it's kind of projection. It's not anything I'm seeing or anything that's happened. It's what could happen. What could happen if the pressure comes
Yeah.
on? What could happen if there's a few injuries or players lose form? It's more concern for me as a fan.
I was so impressed by Arsenal against the goals, especially the goals were just beautiful.
The goals were great, and we were a bit sloppy, but
yeah, but like I just think if you can keep if you can keep doing those patterns of play, like, that's so hard to defend against. One touch pass and in around your box, be precise.
And when you've
moving
got
off the ball, third man runs. It's ridiculously hard to defend.
and when you've got, I think Saka's key to it all because Saka. He's so good one-on-one, like against any fullback. Their left back wasn't half bad, you know. Like he was quick and he was physical, but Saka just he gave him problems because of he's so intelligent when he gets the ball and he changes direction quickly. He can beat a man, knows when to play 1-2s like he did for the goal. He's key to it all. I think if he gets injured, I don't see a direct replacement for him as kind of easily as I do some of the other players where you could, you know, Cedric's been in the side for the last few games at right back, for example. Like you can make do for a few games. We've made do when Xhaka's been out or when Smith Rowe's been out. Even with Aubameyang early in the season, we made do. I think if Saka got injured and Pepe played or Smith Rowe instead of him, they don't offer the same things. So he's the one I would say if he gets injured, I'm worried. But it's all good at the moment. I'm pleased. Like we're doing well. Looking at the other end of the table, it's unfortunately not going so well for Leeds United and our friend Fergus. They're struggling down there. Although I did think I watched the game this weekend. They were a lot better, and I know one of the things that people were saying was it was their highest like XG difference of the season. And they were very unlucky to lose the game. Like no doubt they shouldn't have they should have won it. Like they were the much better team.
Over plus 2 goals at XG or XG go and the Leicester were just very clinical. Harvey Barnes,
he's a great player. He's a great player.
I don't know who's going to pick him up, but
he's fantastic. He's someone I'd be looking at for Arsenal next season. I don't know how easy it would be. I mean, you saw with Maguire with Man United, like they burn them. I don't think they'll sell him cheap if he's under a pretty long term deal.
I wonder, is he going to be the type of player that he won't get that move and he'll just run his contract down and he'll end up being a squad player for someone. I think if Liverpool hadn't signed
he's so explosive. Liverpool's that's a great team to mention because you look at some of their players like Mane, Salah, they're explosive players, and he's
there's no room for him now. But
not now. But he is like as a player profile, he does the things that you want from those kind of wide forwards or inside forwards. He's fantastic, and go on, George.
If Spurs were to lose sort of Son, it'd be
they should be looking at him.
A very, very good replacement. I think we are giving too much credit to Leeds, though. They have improved, but their defense is absolutely woeful.
You know what I would say as well?
1-1-2 within the box, and it literally splits them in half.
Well, and the goalkeeper as well.
Simple. It is the most simple move in football. That. It is genuinely so basic.
Oh yeah, it wasn't like intricate, was it?
No, it was a good finish. It was a good finish. The
keeper should save it. I look at the goalkeeper. Every goal he concedes, they're not always like howlers, but you look at every goal he concedes and go, "Yeah, he could have saved that." Like, not necessarily should have, but you go, "Could have saved it. Could have saved it." Like, of the 60 goals or whatever they've conceded this season, I reckon 50 of them you'd look at and go, "Yeah, he could have saved that. Could have pushed it around the post."
Yeah, it's not necessarily errors. Like he has.
No, but he doesn't like. I wonder what his post shot XG is because I can't imagine it's very good. And I bet Fergus is going to look at it when he listens to this.
It will be incredible.
He'll send me a screen grab.
We'll get a spreadsheet.
I think Leeds for me are still going down. I know.
I said it even after watching Everton tonight.
I said it in January. Leeds are worse than Everton, but
I don't think they are. I know they lost 3-0 to them, but I honestly think I saw enough from them in that game, and part of it, by the way, Leicester was so bad. Leicester reminded me of Leicester when they were at their best. Like, they were so bad. Like, they were so bad. Like, I honestly think I saw enough from them in that game, and part of it, by the way, Leicester was so bad. Leicester reminded me of Leicester when they were at their best. Like, they were so bad. Like, they were so bad. Like, I honestly think I saw enough from them in that game, and part of it, by the way, Leicester reminded me of us under Emery in the first half of that season, where we were conceding 20 shots on goal every week. They couldn't string two passes together, and essentially what it was, which is what we had at the time, they had a match winner. It was Aubameyang doing it for us every week, and it was Harvey Barnes on this occasion. And they've got him, they've got Jamie Vardy.
One time they did manage to string literally
literally two passes together, literally.
I still can't believe they've got players like Albrighton in that team. I understand.
The squad's washed, mate. They've made some poor decisions in the window.
On top of that, the commentators kept praising Dewsbury Hall. Like, yes, he put his body around. He made a load of tackles.
He's not it for me.
I don't know. I don't know what his pass completion was, and I'm sure again someone will probably pull it up and it'll be 90%. I swear it was terrible. He was misplacing passes all over the place, and I just wasn't impressed at all. I just think Leicester have a long way to go to get.
It's 82%. So pretty mad for a centre mid. It's pretty average for a centre midfielder.
There was some poor passes that he made.
Yeah, I just wasn't impressed with Leicester at all. I mean, at home to be conceding 20 shots against Leeds have been the worst team in the league, I think, in 2022. Have they even won a game? I mean, they've been so bad.
I think it's January their last game they won.
Yeah, and it's not. They've been getting battered. Let's be honest. I know they've played some good teams, but getting beat 6 at Liverpool and 7 at Man City and 4 against Spurs at home. I mean,
the team I looked at the table, and the team, because of the games played, the team that Leeds need to do better than between now and the end of the season, and they'll be okay if they do, is Brentford. Brentford got a
Brentford won, didn't they? They beat Norwich.
Big win. Considering they're on a slide themselves.
Oh, they've been playing terribly, Brentford.
Tony got a hat-trick.
2 penalties. He's the best player on them. Quickly, he's the best penalty taker I've seen. I don't agree with Thomas Frank very often, but he is fucking good.
Yeah, he's good.
He's ridiculous.
And now they've got Ericsson as well.
A word on him actually. They did a feature on him on Monday Night Football. His set pieces and just his quality. It was like, because I watched Brentford the other week. We played them, and it was like watching Stoke. Someone said they're Stoke with good PR, and watching that, I thought, they are very direct. But Ivan Toney wasn't playing, so the ball just kept coming back. It was like, you're basically just giving us the ball. But with him back and with Ericsson in there, they've probably, and I think they've got enough points now to a point where I don't think they're going to get dragged into it. I think they'll be all right.
I think it's between Leeds and
it's 3 of 5. I think now, if I look at it, the table, I think Newcastle have done enough. Newcastle had a good win again at the weekend, and they're a bit like us. They're riding the momentum.
8 games or 8 games undefeated for Newcastle,
something like that. They've won 4 of 5 of the last 6, maybe. I think they drew to West Ham, didn't they?
Really great.
I still think it's between Leeds and Brentford as to who's going to be that.
What about Everton?
The extra one. Everton, I think, are in it. I'm talking about just definitely in a proper scrum.
I think you could include Brentford as the 6th, possibly.
Yeah, but I think it's between Leeds. It's a wee mini league between Brentford and Leeds for whoever comes top of that is definitely going to be
2-man league.
Yeah,
head to head.
It would be a shame if the teams that get relegated are Norwich, Watford, and Brentford. Only because I'd love to see a big team get relegated, like Leeds or Everton. Even Burnley, to some extent, have been a Premier League staple. Like, one of them going down would be, even though I really like Sean Dyche, obviously favourable towards Frank Lampard. One of those.
I watch Everton tonight, and they just didn't have the stomach for it. Whereas Burnley, every year they're down there. I don't think they've been in as perilous a position as this late into the season, but they're used to dealing with the pressure of. Every game, we're going to have less possession than the team we're playing. They have the ball, we defend, and we're looking to win games, by the margins. They've been so comfortable doing that for a number of years. Everton don't have the stomach for it. From what I've seen, I mean, Carragher said it tonight, the back 4 they played of Kenny, Holgate, Michael Keane, and Seamus Coleman. It's a championship back 4.
They're awful.
Well, one
No.
of
It
the
is.
worst Premier League.
Coleman was
Coleman's
terrible.
been a good player, Fergal, but he's
Yeah.
finished. He's absolutely he's
He
dreadful.
finished
Yeah, I
couple
tell
years,
you what, I was there. I
He's
was
terrible.
watching it tonight, and although I was like, oh no, Dennis. But then on the opposite side, I was
Kenny
going,
was working,
go on, Doherty, here we go.
Oh, right.
Doherty's finding a bit of form. I loathe to give Spurs players credit, but he's been alright the last couple of games.
Him and Kulusevski have a nice wee link up.
Yeah, let's just stop
Move on.
there with the Spurs. Yeah, we'll talk about them next weekend after they inevitably got to lose, because they are just on that in that cycle of win lose, which they have been for about 2 months. Last bit of the segment, I want to talk a bit about Chelsea. Good win for them, I think, because there's been talk, and I don't think many people seriously believe it, but there's been talk of them getting dragged into the top 4 race. If they they've been stuttering a little bit with the performances recently in the league. But it was a good win in the end. I mean, it was quite funny. It was a 3:00 kickoff, so I was on Twitter sort of while it was on, and people were sort of saying, "Oh, this is Chelsea. They're struggling with a deep block again." And then suddenly it was 3-0 after about 57 minutes, about 12 minutes in the second half.
It was like Burnley. This is why, like, you compare Burnley and Everton, similar score lines there, and how much they lost by, but it's chalk and cheese between the quality of the two teams. Like Burnley were like, we didn't get a sniff in the first half. They should have probably had a goal. Havertz looked like they were handling Havertz really, really well in the first half, I thought. Then in the second half, it was just one moment of quality from Reece James. It's great to see him hit the
Brilliant
ground
goal.
running, straight away. And then Burnley, because they know they're at at this stage of the season, they know they have to try and push for to get a goal back. And then Chelsea picked them off on transitions. But Burnley, I'm still every time I look at them, I go, like, literally, I don't think I've seen a bad before. I wouldn't not watch them every week, but like, I don't know if I ever see a bad performance from Burnley from start to finish. I'm always like, oh jeez, they were a bit unlucky. If they had
The
got a goal
quality's
in
not
that
quite
game-
there, though, is it?
No, the quality's never quite there. But like, I always just feel like if they had scored that, it could have been a different game. They always have that moment.
And that is what they do. Like, they are,
Yeah.
they win games by the odd goal. They take their chance, and then they're pretty solid when they get in front. I know someone will probably then pull up a stat. Oh, they've lost this many points from winning, but traditionally, like, they win games by the odd goal, and they're comfortable defending 1-goal leads. They did it expertly against Spurs a couple of weeks ago, and it was just the quality of Chelsea. And you mentioned Havertz there. He was quiet first half, but he suddenly just came to life in that second half and scored 2 good goals. I want to ask you about him. Do you think for the rest of the season he's the answer to kind of go with up front? Because Lukaku's not showing any form in the last few weeks and months, to be honest with you, since he made those comments. And Havertz kind of looks the best option now. He played well in the Champions League against Lille. He played well in the Carabao Cup, albeit he did play as a false 9, didn't he? And then Lukaku came on and they kind of moved him. What do you think?
I'm like, I think we have to try and make Lukaku work. So I feel like we can't give up on him between now and the end of the season. Having said that, there is very little showing from Lukaku that one is efforts looks like seems like it has dropped off, and there does seem to be a bit of an attitude problem. Then also Havertz, just like the whole team looks better. It just looks so much better. So like Havertz, his efforts there, and then everything else is clicking as well. And so if we're being cynical, and if Thomas Tuchel's going to have the same attitude as he's had with the goalkeepers, with the strikers, it's Havertz in it from now to the end of the season. And I did say this a little while ago. Like, is Havertz gonna be the main striker? And like, he's looking really good.
Do you know who's the answer for me? Sorry, George, to cut you off.
No, go.
Tammy Abraham.
Yeah.
He's a pretty decent player.
Amen to that. Amen.
I think he scored again on the weekend.
He
Didn't
did.
He did.
Tabs and Tammy.
Tabs and Tammy, little tabs on Tammy.
There you go, guys.
But for me, the only redeeming factor for Lukaku at the moment, and obviously I'm going to try and
here he goes. Give him some rope. Hang himself.
Genuineness. having Reece James back in the team is going to be absolutely massive for Lukaku. Someone who offers that bit of width and a bit of creativity from a wide angle. I don't think Azpilicueta could do that. You know, I remember he was decent a couple seasons ago.
Azpilicueta's got the deep cross, and
Yeah,
It's
to
a Morata.
I remember
Yeah.
Morata. Yeah, always
Yeah.
used to put in some headers. But yeah, Reece James is going to hopefully reinvigorate both Havertz and Lukaku, because let's be honest, neither of them were really scoring
No,
consistently.
it is a good point. Like on Havertz, he hadn't scored in the league since the previous Burnley game, where I think he scored in a 1-1 draw. So it's not like he's been setting the world alight. But I think his performance in that Champions League game, and then when he played against Liverpool in the Carabao Cup, I think he just showed more than Lukaku's been showing recently. And as Fergal said, the rest of the team played better, and that is the most important thing.
He creates
It doesn't
more spaces and
he
gets more pressures. You know, that is simple as that.
No, it sounds stupid, but like he doesn't have like he doesn't have a presence, and that kind of actually helps him because he's able to just ghost in. And like he scored. I think it was his third header of the season for a goal, and like he's better in the air than Lukaku when it comes to like scoring.
It looked so easy though, didn't it? There was no one within
he's that
a couple of
about
yards
him.
of him.
Just like he has an elegancy about him, and like Lukaku on the other hand is making everything look like hard work.
Yeah.
So
He's playing with Timberland boots on. He started crashing about the pitch. But no, I think that's your best option. And it is interesting you mentioned the having to make it work because, well, previously I would say Chelsea haven't had to do that with signings. But going forward, there might just be that added pressure.
Money.
And
especially
we'll get on to that in the last part of the episode. Welcome back to the last part of the show, and we've saved the best till last, at least from my perspective as an Arsenal fan. The news that's come out this week that Roman Abramovic has put Chelsea up for sale. He's going to be out of here. Well, I would say soon, but I think the sale's going to take a bit of time to find a buyer and go through. But we'll talk about that sort of from a wider point of view in a bit. But kind of the relevance of it, at least for the weekend, was the chanting that was going on the away end, sort of during the the minutes of applause that was going on for what's going on in Ukraine at the moment. And the Chelsea fans started chanting Roman Abramovic's name. Your reaction to that, guys?
Could you be so tone deaf? It's just absolutely. No, you can't sympathise with what they were trying to do. There's some part of me that is just, you can't. How can you be so tone deaf? It's just despicable, really.
Can I play devil's advocate for a second? Sorry, if you were going to come in, Fergal. I just look at it and I hate Roman Abramovich and take the politics out of it. I hate him for what he's empowered Chelsea Football Club to be able to do. He's basically given them 2 Champions Leagues, 5 league titles or whatever it's been, loads of domestic cups. They've won every trophy in the book under his watch. So I understand the point of view that for a lot of these Chelsea fans, he's probably given them some of the best moments of their life. Yeah. So I do understand that there's a gratitude and an appreciation to him.
There's also the point that I think a lot of Chelsea fans this week have felt like sort of the club's being personally attacked for what's happening in Ukraine, and and I think there was a bit of that in it that they had they've had it all week, and then that's turned the whole supporting Ukraine thing into a thing about them, that's the bit where I'm like, just missing the point. It really is.
Yeah,
it really isn't about Chelsea whatsoever.
No.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, I think you can have all of those feelings towards Abramovich. You can have appreciation. You can love him for what he's done for the football club and what have you. But it's a timing thing. I just think that when and people can have their opinion on kind of what these gestures mean and how effective they are, and kind of that's another discussion itself. But ultimately, you're doing it. Just don't be so tone deaf. I think tone deaf was the right phrase from George to use. Just because it doesn't look good. Like, I have to be honest with you, it doesn't look good. It kind of
and I think majority of Chelsea fans watching it. I follow a couple of guys that would go, season ticket holders would go to the game, and like they were liking tweets about like just how tone deaf it was.
I think I honestly, and I don't mean to make this about individuals. I think John Terry's tweet the other day was tone deaf. To be honest with you, where he said he like thank you for everything or whatever it was, whatever he said.
His Twitter account might as well be called tone deaf.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But and he can have all those sentiments, but like don't put that out to a wider audience, because then that what happened on Saturday is why what John Terry tweeted 3 days ago. That's why it matters, because that then, and I'm not saying that's the only reason they did it, because they saw what he tweeted, but it's kind of like it's a soft influence, right? It's kind of a contributing part towards it. You know, the arguably the greatest player in Chelsea's history is validating that point of view. So it kind of like stems wider questions, I think, about, you know, owners in football and the kind of the morality side of it. Because I have to say, like, if I was a Chelsea fan, I think I would feel very differently about Abramovich, particularly at my age. If I'd grown up and kind of, you're not thinking about the morality of owners like when you grow up watching football. You're just watching a team on the pitch, and they're winning games and making you happy. And football itself, it kind of is for me anyway. I go every week, and it's kind of an escapism for 90 minutes or whatever. You're watching a team that you're you know, there's tribalism, there's passion, there's loads of emotion that goes into it, and all that matters for that 90 minutes is what goes on the pitch. And he has allowed Chelsea and their fans to experience so many great moments. So I do understand the idea that they I think worship's the wrong word, because I don't think you should ever feel that way about an owner, but I understand the gratitude towards him, and I don't think necessarily they are inclined to look at the politics of it. I don't think the burden of that falls on Chelsea fans. I think it falls on those that are running the game, and it has done for, you know, 15 years or whenever he came in 2004. That's my perspective on it.
I'm like I'm like that. I wouldn't hold a grudge against anybody that is so thankful to Abramovich for what he's done. I started supporting Chelsea because Damien Duff was my favourite Irish player. Shock us to Ireland, and he was playing for Chelsea, and they just won the league. And it happened just at the moment I was getting into football, and they're a good team. That's why I started supporting football. I started supporting Chelsea. So then I grow up, and you learn about Abramovich, and you learn about some of the dodgy stuff, and like it does become like a moral thing, and depending on who we get, I'm kind of looking forward to it, to be honest. I'm
interesting.
I it's just the type of person I am. I'm also like I'm not I know what level of fan I am. I'm not absolutely diehard Chelsea are always right sort of fans, like, and like, you know, that's to my detriment in some aspects of being a football fan. I'm not a season ticket holder. I know where I stand in that sort of pecking order. But for me, like, Abramovich has been great, but I think my favorite season supporting Chelsea, one where I was like really, really, really into it, was when Frank Lampard was managing with all the kids coming through, and that wasn't really like don't get me wrong, we had Kovacic on a sneaky wee deal, and Pulisic
Pulisic you'd already signed,
was sorted out and stuff like that. So it was still about 100 million spent, but I really enjoyed that. And I really enjoyed the Cobham lads coming through, like Trevor Chalobah having his moment on the first day of the season and stuff like that. It's great that we have this infrastructure in place because of Abramovich, and we're able to move on. And fingers crossed, we move on. And there's no guarantees with billionaires. But fingers crossed, we move on to someone who is easier to like. And to not feel so dirty about where the money's coming from.
I think
Um,
there's. I think
There's a
pro-
problem though. I
problem there,
think
though. I think there's a problem with that. First off, I mean, with Chelsea fans, sort of praising obviously Abramovich and being thankful for what he's given. Me personally, I don't attribute moments of success to Abramovich. For example, first Champions League, that to me is Roberto Di Matteo, a Chelsea legend beforehand.
Mm.
FA Cup final goal. Then on top of that, seasons, notable seasons for me. Ancelotti just winning the double was fantastic, mainly because of our style of play. Any sort of Jose Mourinho moment, and then Frank Lampard nearly tops it as well, just for the football romance.
Yeah.
I just think I've got to disagree, Fergal. I don't think celebrating Abramovich leaving is particularly wise. I think it's kind of naive to
I'm
want.
not. Look, I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not necessarily celebrating. Probably is a bit over the top, but I think
a
it
weightlifting,
heavily
maybe.
depends on who's
But then I don't
buying.
think there is an ethical billionaire.
That's what I was gonna say. That was my
And then
yeah.
But there is a
and then
more ethical billionaire.
That's the
yeah, but
point. I think it's
that's
kind of like there's a lot of grey in between. I think if you're saying okay, what Abramovich does and what the Saudis do, and like that's black. But then in the middle, you can find faults with all the American guys that are in football. There's other Russians that are in football. Man City are owned by Arab Emirates. Like I
I mean,
think
we've lost.
My hope is that the best case scenario is that because we're not gonna. I don't. The chance of getting someone that backs Chelsea as much as Abramovich did, like Chelsea are
I
running
don't think
out
it's
of
going to
money.
happen, and
But
that's what I was
that's not
going to
gonna happen.
say.
The
Yeah,
only chance of that is getting some state to come in, and then that's
yeah.
definitely not morally right. So I definitely don't
And
want that.
I also don't think a state will come in because I think what you saw on Saturday is it's going to take a long time, I think, to wash Abramovich's image off Chelsea. I think they are entrenched with it. And I think that's ultimately, if you ask most Chelsea fans, I think they'd take that. I think they go, do you know what? Give us 2 Champions Leagues, won a load of trophies.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Like, we're grateful to him. And I think it takes time to kind of like take his image off the club and move on.
Yeah.
And I think,
What I just finished my point.
yeah, go for it.
The best case scenario is a billionaire that put in a bit of investment, but is gonna set up the club to run sustainably. We're at a point now where, like, sort of like Liverpool, but hopefully not take money out of the club. That's best case
That's
scenario.
the, yeah.
Yeah,
Is that you're
I
looking at someone that is happy for Chelsea to run on its own in its own right, but try not siphon money out like Man United, for example.
I think what you've just mentioned there as well is something that Chelsea haven't, and you kind of mentioned it with the Lukaku signing, like having to try and make it work. That's not, I think, something they've had to do with a lot of their signings.
Yeah.
Like when they've signed a player and it hasn't worked, or a manager and it hasn't worked, get rid of him. On to the next.
The amount of buyback clauses buying players back that
You've been able to do that.
Like we've
Because
managed to win, like this last Champions League. We managed to win it after selling Lukaku, De Bruyne, and Salah. Like I don't think there's many other clubs that would have gotten away
see,
with doing that.
no,
the
but you've
problem
had
here is
Abramovich
not.
But
Yeah, but the problem here
that's
is
my
not.
point.
as kind
We've
of
had
a
Abramovich.
benefactor.
We've had
Basically, that is what his
Abramovich
role.
But the problem
sweep
here
up the
is, but
mistakes.
that's beside the debate. Though the problem here is not the fact that Chelsea have infinite resources. The problem is where do those the only reason Abramovich has been kicked out is not because he's super rich. So
No.
so getting rid of Abramovich, it doesn't create a catalyst for change in football. It doesn't change anything at
No,
Chelsea.
of course it
In
doesn't.
fact, I don't.
Well,
Yeah, I think it
well,
changes
my
nothing for
question was.
Chelsea whatsoever.
No, but he's saying where does it leave Chelsea, like as a
Well,
football club,
it
right?
doesn't change. It does nothing changes. So
I
if we
think
go
it
and
does
get
though.
a more
From a
ethical billionaire,
footballing
it doesn't
from a
matter.
footballing perspective, what Fergal just said there, and what I think as well, Chelsea now, when they make mistakes, there will be consequences for it. Whether they sign bad players or appoint the wrong managers and give players poor contracts and like blah blah blah, like loads of footballing decisions that they've been able to write off before, they will not be able to do that now. No one else, apart from
We've
maybe
been
Man
running a lot.
City.
We've
No,
run out
what?
like 100 million. Just like he's been like,
Well, they owe
yeah,
Abramovich $1.5 billion. I mean, he's not going to
yeah,
reclaim it, although he has put the
No, no,
club up for
what I asked,
1.5 billion over
I know.
market value. So he's not some sort of philanthropist. But
yeah.
yeah,
But then why are people saying this is a good thing for football then for Abramovich to leave? Because I don't understand that.
I
Like,
don't think people are. I think that horse has already bolted. I think the horse
yeah,
bolted when he first came into the league.
This is my point, is that this is just a funny question, a funny thing. So the horse is bolted. Now come back.
it can't.
The original
Yeah.
horse has came back. Can we now just kick out the rest of them?
Just get rid of the Saudis and you're not there of
Well,
Emirates. Get rid of them all.
I'll go back on it all now. Oh.
People acting like this can change things. It can't.
I don't think people are.
We've lost the
I
people.
actually don't think they are.
I haven't really heard that. I'm just talking about going forward as me as a fan.
Yeah.
I
From a
think
Chelsea perspective.
the next success we get, I think, will be harder earned.
But it is interesting.
don't
Like,
think
I know,
Yeah,
I know Chelsea fans like that go to the games and are passionate about it, and they don't necessarily feel the same way about Abramovich that you do. They're gutted
No,
about him
no.
leaving, and they don't give a fuck that he came over to sports wash and wash his reputation and
I disagree
and
as well, Harry. Because I mean, if you could go to any football fan in a ground and say name another oligarch, they probably can't. A majority of fans within the Premier League have a massive disdain for Abramovich. He could have genuinely hid his millions.
yeah, but Chelsea fans don't.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is he's not sports washed, because sports.
I think he undoubtedly has. In terms
He
of it,
has.
he's
he hasn't.
undoubtedly
has.
improved his reputation. Mate,
No, he
he
hasn't.
stole the resources of a country, and now you've seen it with Chelsea fans. This is how sports washing is successful. You take tribal football fans. The guys that go to the
They're
game
backing
every
him on
week,
everything.
90% of them will defend
being backed.
anything he
Yeah, but the
does.
problem is 90% of a tiny percentage of this country. He has worsened his reputation by being affiliated to Chelsea. If he had just been living in England and he's had his assets maybe freezed, no one would have heard of that. No one would have heard of him, potentially because of his famous yacht.
Well, I guess it then
But
comes down to:
he's
are you
improved the
better off?
community. So
Are you
also,
better off if more people feel strongly for you and will defend you at any cost, but
well,
then you
that's
alienate like a larger percentage? That's, I suppose, what it comes down to.
Yeah,
I think the sports washing bit, like, that's before you have to take. It's almost like you have to write off the Ukraine bit for the sports washing. Sports
Yeah,
washing.
I can include that in that.
Yeah,
I take that out of it.
and also you can make an
No, yeah,
argument that
yeah.
he's been, because he's bought Chelsea, he himself has been given a bit more time than some other people to sort it out.
I disagree. I think obviously I don't know the other situations with the oligarchs, but in terms of Abramovich, I think he could have had a very quiet, happy, rich life. I think he's bought Chelsea not to improve his it's not PR. Like as much as
He might
have
have bought it
is
for that
literally,
reason, but
it's not the intention. It's helped. No, but it hasn't. It
No, I
hasn't.
mean,
helped
only
him
he
in one
knows
bit.
what the
It's
motivating
bled him.
intention was
It's
at the
bled him of
start.
money. Yeah, it's bled him of money. It's decreased his popularity in England like tenfold. It's not been a good investment in terms of PR in sort of relation to Man City owners and Newcastle owners. And I'm not saying that his motives are necessarily, better than those of the Saudis and the Qataris. What I'm saying is there was clearly a project here with Chelsea, and the main project was not to improve his PR. It was to win. It was to win titles. It genuinely was, because he could have invested.
I think they're
in
linked, mate.
I do get that point. Maybe it's a secondary positive, but I just imagine that he's gotten a lot of opportunities because he's Chelsea manager that he wouldn't have, or Chelsea owner that he wouldn't have got if he had just been just an oligarch.
Multi-billionaire. I think you I mean, he's before Ukraine, he had his visa revoked in England. He's not had special treatment in England compared to other oligarchs. He's not been treated well by, and he
No,
shouldn't be treated.
I
And I'm
agree
not
with
saying he should
that.
be.
I
He
agree
should
with
not be
that.
treated well. He has been.
I
He's
agree
had
with that. Like,
expansion
if
plans rejected in Stamford Bridge. This is not a man who is looked favourably on by politics, by political figures, or by the general public. So, so I just think sports washing is too simple of a explanation to why Chelsea and Abramovich
Well, no,
became a thing.
it's more. I think, as I said before, like, and you make a good point. Like, how many other Russian oligarchs could I name? Like, not many, to be honest with you. Like, would I have heard of him if he didn't own Chelsea? Would I have a strong disdain for the man if he hadn't empowered one of our biggest rivals and led them
Yeah.
to win loads of? Probably not. But as I said to you, it's if you're looking at the sports washing element of it, and you believe that, the argument you would make is there is a small percentage of these guys that worship the guy. They're like a hero figure to him. So it's like, does that outweigh all the other negative PR and
think
reputational stuff that he gets?
I think the bit that ruins your argument, George, is you. You are a very socially aware, very politically minded person. Yeah, you're backing an oligarch in this scenario.
No, that's not.
He's not. He's not. He's not.
Yeah, no, I am.
I think that's sports
Keep
washing in
Roman
one.
Abramovich. He is the best thing to happen to Britain since sliced bread. My opinion.
But do you share Fergal's optimism, to kind of take it away from politics a little bit, George? Do you share his optimism for Chelsea going forward? Like, do you
No.
think it's a good thing?
I think we invest much less in the community, and I think we, I don't think we'll ever. No, only because I just don't think there is a right owner. So no matter what happens now, Abramovich has put a stain on the club so deep. It's so deep rooted that Chelsea will never get away from the fact that we are a club that is built on an oligarch pumping in billions. So we have only been bought for 2 billion or 3 billion because of Roman Abramovich, and that will forever be Chelsea's legacy. We could get bought by a pauper, and it wouldn't somehow. I don't know. It could be gifted,
but that's always going to be there.
yeah.
Could be bought by a Euro Millions winner.
Yeah, I could take custody of the club, and I couldn't improve the PR.
No, I don't think the PR changes. It's just like,
no, just the perception. Chelsea doesn't change now,
and I don't see how it you might start running like like we've spoken about this before. Like, managers at Chelsea have never been able to build legacies and become legends, and it's always been kind of Chelsea have succeeded kind of in spite maybe of some of the decisions that have gone on. It's almost
the
been
money's
chaotic.
always been there to sweep up mistakes and just go, well, that didn't work, we'll try something else.
Just do something else, whether it be players or managers or whatever. But now I think, like, unless you get another person, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen. It's not very common in football. But
I see. I'm hope, as I said, best case scenario is that we don't get someone that's going to try and
take money out.
Make money.
Take money out. That is best case scenario. I'm well aware of that. It's likely that we'll try and get someone that's going to try and make Chelsea. But in doing that, it might go towards more my football and philosophy. The fact that they have this great asset in the academy, and that we're not going to sell Gurhi and give Mangala and Sarr a go, and then Mangala and Sarr just be absolutely awful.
That's a positive element to it, actually. And like, Chelsea have had the best academy over the last 10, 15 years, and how many of these guys haven't been given a chance, haven't made it? So
I think any new owner, because we're not going to get one. As I said, we're not going to get another Abramovich type that's going to pump in 1.5 billion, and then be like, right now,
and write it off.
Back. It's the next one that comes in is going to think twice before letting a Livermore go any of these top academy projects, because they're going to see that they're 50 million pound assets that Chelsea may end up having to buy back.
I think the best case scenario would be Chelsea fan ownership for 51%, but that'll never happen. If we were
Yeah,
the catalyst for that, if we push that and managed to achieve it,
people are
which
gone in
again
England, isn't
wouldn't
it?
happen, it would be
Yeah,
you'd be it's
Well, we
again, it
stopped the
doesn't solve
Super
all the
League, so
issues.
maybe we
Definitely doesn't
could do
solve
that.
all the issues,
yeah,
but
that's true.
that would be the best case scenario for me.
Yeah, to be honest, like I think I think the likely outcome is you'll
Yeah.
have to function like a Liverpool, like an Arsenal. You'll be
I think
self-sustaining.
Liverpool's a good
Liverpool
model.
are an example of a club that have done it well. Arsenal have been kind of they used to take money out. Now we're out of the Champions League. They've had to stop putting money in, and they've had to invest a bit more. And like that self-sustaining model, when done well, in an ideal world, fantastic. Like,
It's an idealistic, optimistic.
and it doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
You have to get every decision right. Liverpool basically, with their recruitment, got every recruitment decision and managerial appointment
Not only
right
that,
for about
Yeah.
3 or 4 years, and
Not
then
only
didn't have any injuries and won the league.
yeah,
They have to
not
get
only
everything
that,
perfect.
they've only won two major trophies in 16 years. So, really, realistically, do they actually keep up with Man City? No, they don't.
No, they can't.
Will,
And that
will
was it.
Chelsea, will Chelsea ever be able to keep up with Manchester City? No.
And
We
will
could
Chelsea get
see,
back to where they
but in
were?
terms of no. And I think in terms of competitiveness in the Premier League, it could be Newcastle, Man City for the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a depressing thought. I mean, it really is. I've spoken on this before. Like, it's not you're not in a nice place with football when you're basically begging to be taken over by. And I know you guys aren't because you're kind of like morally aware fans, but like if you want to succeed in the sport, you basically have to either, as I said, like as a self-sustaining club, get every decision right, or you have to be state owned by some not very nice people, to put it mildly.
I mean, if you haven't got the fan base, you look at Leicester. They had to get every decision right just to have a chance to get in.
Just have a couple of years, and even then they didn't get into the Champions League.
Now that a few things haven't gone right, they're nowhere near it. So like, the league is so tough.
It is funny. I saw something the other day from Swiss Ramble, and it was like the commercial revenue streams over the last like 5 years or whatever. And Man City were like dubiously top of it, like ahead of Man United and Chelsea and Liverpool. It's just like, no, you're fucking not, lads.
They had another
No,
random brand.
Yeah, another dubious sponsorship, I'm sure.
It was okay. It's the first time I've noticed it, and it was like sort of pixelated logo.
Yeah.
I was like, I wonder where that's from.
I know, but they've been. Do you know what it is? That they're in a position now where Man City's owners are far more wealthy than the governing body. So they get taken to the court of arbitration and they get let off because they've got more money to fight it. I mean, they should have been thrown out the Champions League.
That UEFA thing was the reason they lost that is because it gone past their UEFA's own time limits.
Yeah, it was a farce.
That was just UEFA being pathetic.
It's just a farce. Like, and football sold it. And Abramovic, I have a lot of apathy towards him, I suppose, because that was the start of it. Like that takeover was the start. This is where we sold our soul, and this is where you kind of let these sharks into the boardroom, and you're not going back from there. And as I said before, like it's not on the fans to raise a stink about this. Like Newcastle fans protested against Mike Ashley for the best part of 10 years. They couldn't get rid of the guy. So, good luck trying to get rid of the Saudis. It's just not going to happen. Yeah. And it's not on them to do that either. Football sold its soul a long time ago. And those that are running the game are responsible for that. And it's quite a depressing state of affairs to put it quite mildly. But
yeah, like I've enjoyed the fine wine, the steak, and everything. If it means a few years of getting down and gritty and like being the main thing I hope it comes from this is that we just look to the academy and maybe look more longevity, which is something I've always wanted Chelsea to do. I think this might force us to look that way.
You did it. You mentioned it. Like you had to do it, to an extent for a season with Mount and Abraham and some of these guys. That where you couldn't sign. You had a transfer ban, and Lampard was manager. Yeah,
he's Spurs twice here.
Yeah. To be fair, like watching Arsenal this season, like I know we're doing well, so it's quite easy to say it. But like, even if we weren't, you're prepared to forgive mistakes when it is youth and you do see an upside to it, I think, and you identify a bit more with the players that are playing for the team, I think, than if you're just signing loads of players and they're just crap basically for big money. It's quite depressing.
It also means that like the transfer budget mightn't be so big come the summer, so it reduced the likeliness that Chelsea are going to sign Declan Rice, which is even better.
Very good, very good. I think we'll finish it there for today. Thanks, guys, for your time as always. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.